The reality is, in the United States of America, we have executed just over 1,500 people in the modern day of the death penalty, which began with a Supreme Court decision in 1976. In that same amount of time, we have exonerated 190 people off of death row, meaning we have decided that they are innocent and they no longer deserve the death penalty. 10 of those people were exonerated in the state of Oklahoma. For me, I realized that killing innocent people is an inherent part of the death penalty, meaning we'll never get it perfect. Right now, that number is 12%, so 1 in 10 is going to be innocent.
So when it comes to criminal justice reform, when it comes to the death penalty and seeking a moratorium on it, I look to the life of Jesus as a model for that. Scripture doesn't say that there's no form of punishment for crime, but I do believe that Scripture says that life is valuable, that in the beginning we were inherently made in the image of God. And as a people, not just those who live a good life or who do good, are made in the image of God. Every human being is made in the image of God, and by that very fact alone, their life has worth and value.
Pragmatically speaking, I don't think this works. I think you can demonstrate that it doesn't work. Maybe what is most tragic about that is that it looks like there are such gaps in the system and gaps in our credibility that it is altogether possible that we have executed somebody for a crime he or she didn't commit. And that is the opposite of being pro-life. We don't end the cycle of violence, we just further it.
You know, the death penalty doesn't stop somebody from killing people, you know what I mean? So on one hand, we say killing is wrong, you know, unless the state gets to do it. I'm a person of faith, and I think that it's important that people of faith, you know, stand up for, you know, the lives of those who are in the hands of the state.
I am calling upon the governor and all those in leadership to place a moratorium on death sentences, especially in light of the commission's report that came out a few years ago that outlines all the issues with Oklahoma's death penalty.
Yeah, as a citizen of Oklahoma, I do think it is a good idea to have a moratorium. And that partly is reflected on a commission that was done a number of years ago that was bipartisan, that had recommendations that if we are going to continue to use capital punishment, these are the revisions and the things that need to change in order to do that.
Read the Death Penalty Commission report that came out in 2016, 2017. Read through that report, it's very detailed. It outlines a lot of the changes that would need to take place for the people who believe in the death penalty but think it needs to be done the right way. That's a great place to start.
So the Death Penalty Commission was a group of bipartisan, nonpartisan individuals, Democrats, Republicans, I believe 5 men and 6 women. We had prosecutors, we had judges, we had defense attorneys, many of them former. We had law professors and law school deans. We had victims advocates. Some people on the Death Penalty Review Commission were supportive of the death penalty, and some were not. But what we did was come together for about a year and a half of in-depth study and meetings with prosecutors all across the state, defense counsel, and other stakeholders in the process. What we found really opened my eyes. I was shocked. We found that at every step of the death penalty process, there are major flaws that lead to incorrect conclusions, ultimately. We know that in Oklahoma, 10 people on death row have been exonerated, found innocent through subsequent DNA evidence. That tells me that there are probably other innocent people on death row. We have probably, I hate to say it, but we've probably executed innocent people in Oklahoma. And so ultimately, the Death Penalty Review Commission, you know, we felt like it was a conservative value to want to get it right. If we're going to have the death penalty, the ultimate punishment of putting people to death, we need to make absolutely certain that we get it right. Now, I don't know if there's any way to make it perfect, probably not, but it is a terribly imperfect system currently with flaws all along the way, and we need to address those flaws. And that's what our report from the Death Penalty Review Commission was all about.
Those revisions and recommendations haven't been given the proper attention to continue the death penalty in Oklahoma.
What brings me here today is just wanting to lend my support to the efforts that are going towards at least bringing a moratorium to the death penalty here in Oklahoma. When I look at Jesus' ministry here on earth, I just couldn't come away thinking that it was okay to deem someone unredeemable, because thankfully Jesus did not do that for any of us.
I firmly believe that creating trauma on top of trauma isn't the way to go, and it certainly isn't justice. The Jesus I read about was all about truth and grace.
Two of the really core convictions for Christians are that every human life is sacred and that redeeming grace has great power. Those are both core to the story of creation and redemption that we read in the scripture. So when we're dealing with complicated ethical situations, we want to have a bias towards grace, towards redemption, and towards honoring the sanctity of life. And I think that has to shape how we view capital punishment. More broadly, we want to put this conversation about capital punishment within the context of a larger conversation about restorative justice. As a state, we're responding to crime often in a way that perpetuates our community problems instead of bringing healing. So we need to have a more grace-filled, redemptive, restorative approach, and capital punishment is one of those issues that is really going to be a litmus test for how we think about the redeeming power of grace.
We don't burn people's houses down if they're arsonists. We don't steal from people who steal. But for some reason, we've created a society where we think it's okay to kill somebody because they killed and rob them of any future opportunity of redemption.
This is a human being. This is a life. And every life has value. And if we believe that, we have to really consider, are we the ones that should be taking that life?
Particularly people of faith, when we examine not just the words, but the way of Christ, while we respect and hold all scripture authoritatively, I'm asking particularly people of Christian faith to re-examine our hearts around the value of life, what it really means to be pro-life, how we can stop sowing violence.
I believe in the sanctity of life. I believe that every human life has value. If it was your family member, would it be okay?
My faith says you don't take this man's life. When I see a diverse body of people, faith-wise, culturally, ethnically, that are saying, hold on, let's take a deeper look, it gives me hope.
I think it's a very important time in Oklahoma's history because we do have an attorney general who is closely looking at this. We have legislators who are looking at all the issues.
So given all the other surrounding issues and given that we're spending huge amounts of money to execute people and that most Oklahomans would rather see a more restorative, gracious approach to criminal justice, it seems like all of these compounding issues are saying, even if you support capital punishment, we can't keep doing it like we're doing it here and now.
Even if you believe in the death penalty and you've applied a certain measure of intellectual integrity to getting to that position, you then have to say that you believe in the competency of the state to execute people in a way that does not cause undue harm. And it's not cruel and unusual.
Wanting to make sure that these protocols are humane. So it's time to pause, it's time to stop, it's time to think about, is this who we want to be as a state?
We said, if you're going to have it, Oklahoma, do it right. And you're not doing it right now. There should be a moratorium. No more executions until we fix the flawed system.
With the moratorium, I would say, like, what is the harm in waiting, in taking time to truly prayerfully consider and ask questions and have open conversations with people that might believe a little bit differently?
I think our lawmakers need to know where we stand, and they listen to their constituents. So make a phone call, let them know where you stand on the death penalty and why you would call for a moratorium.
I see attitudes slowly changing out there toward the death penalty, and I I see people starting to think about what this bipartisan group of people, some who support the death penalty and some who don't, have said. And there are many, many flaws in the process. And until those flaws are addressed and corrected, we should hold off. And I think that message is resonating with people. I think, Democrats and Republicans alike, conservatives and liberals alike, get that.
So there's a lot of resources out there and a lot of things, but I think what's important is just to take a next step, wherever you're at. Don't ignore, I know there's so many issues in the world right now, and it's impossible to pay attention to all of them, but if this is one for you, if this is something that you feel your heart leaning towards, then take that next step.